live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor. It is the podcast that promises and delivers on bringing you the very best guests in all of true crime, day in and day out. And today, we're pivoting back to another disturbing North Florida murder for hire plot story. Now, our original story, of course, is the murder of Dan Markel, the FSU law professor. You guys know that story, gunned down in his Tallahassee driveway back in July of 2014. There was a custody dispute over his children. His ex-wife, Wendy Adelson, reportedly whining to the family. The family, takes action, hires a couple of thugs, and one was a Latin King gang member, through a go-between, and try to take care of their problem. However, years later, Charlie Adelson has now been convicted for that crime, and the mother, the matriarch, Dan Markel's ex-mother-in-law, is going to stand trial. Well, an eerily similar case playing out in Jacksonville, Florida. The Microsoft executive, Jared Bridegan, and I know his family tunes in occasionally, Kirsten Bridegan. So our thoughts are with you, and we are here to help you if you need us. And there is a Justice for Jared Bridegan page, I think, on Facebook and also on Instagram, and on X as well. So if you're interested in this case, as you should be, if you're a true crime devotee, please support the Bridegan family. But this actually happened back in February of 2022. So that's exactly 3 years from today that it did happen. Jared Bridegan driving with his young 2-year-old at the time. The 2-year-old's in the car, sees a tire in the middle of the road, stops to remove the tire. He's ambushed, shot, and killed. There is a trigger man, an alleged trigger man at that point, named Henry Tenon, and he confesses. He says, I was hired to do this. I'm the trigger man. Cuts a plea deal. He is supposed to be the state's, prime witness when this goes to trial in October of 2025. But suddenly, everything just gets flipped upside down as this trigger man has now sort of recanted his story. And that's what we're going to talk about, amongst other things as well. You've got the best guest tonight, famed Tallahassee criminal defense attorney, the letter R, O-U-R, Timothy Jansen. Also was a former federal prosecutor. The guy knows the law, especially in Florida, especially in North Florida. And then we've got Shannon Schott, who's been ongoing clockwise here, raised in Jacksonville, Florida. She attended the Bowles School, went to University of Florida. She graduated with a Bachelor's of Arts and then went on to Stetson University College of Law and practices in this very courthouse at times and knows the case extremely well, and is going to tell us how this all played out and kind of the oddity of it. And last but not least, the professor emerita at the University of Nebraska School of Law, Joe Patuto, who I believe is coming to us from the great state of New Jersey, although she has a tendency to move around where it is the dead of winter, the winter doldrums there in New Jersey. So, Shannon, without any further ado, and by the way, we're looking at this widow now, sadly, Kirsten Bridegan, and these are the players. Shanna, the ex-wife. Again, this was having to do with a custody battle. Jared and Kirsten had 2 children of their own, but the children that Shanna had with Jared are the children that were kind of being caught in this tug of war. And then you've got the estranged husband, Mario Fernandez Saldana, and that's the trigger man on the right, looking a bit like a character out of a movie. This guy, Henry Tenon, who I believe is now 62 years old. He would have committed this crime when he was around 59 years old. There's a bunch to talk about and get caught up. Right now, the chat, it was at 666. It always makes me nervous. And then it bounced up to 668. So we're safe. Shannon, so January 13th, there is sort of a court check-in. Henry Tenon hadn't been in court. Explain what happens in Jacksonville, why Henry was there, and how this sort of played out, because this has kind of flipped the case on its head now.
Yeah, so in Duval County, where we are, the judges, the circuit court criminal judges generally have us, and you can see in the background, that's like one of our Duval County courthouses with the pillars of wood. They have us come in Monday through Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. for what we call calendar. And you just come in, it's a status conference hearing or a pretrial conference hearing, or a final pretrial. And it could be a number of things. And we all kind of sit there behind where Shanna and her attorney are standing. There's benches. And so you have like 2 tables for the state, 2 tables for the public defenders / the defense side. And then there's all these benches where the attorneys will go and they'll sit, and we kind of have to like watch. And then you actually have to call up, you have to tell the bailiff that you want to talk to your inmate, or you want to talk to them in like these rooms that were specially built for conferences, or if you want them to come out of the chute, which is a different door. And then you have to sign them up, and then there's a screen that says what case is ready to go. So when Shanna Gardner is being called into court, it takes longer because they have to clear the men out of the chute and then like put women in the chute. And so on this particular day, Henry Tenon was in court, and I don't believe that Gardner, Fernandez, and Tenon go to court on the same days. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Obviously Tenon is testifying against Gardner and Fernandez. So I would assume that they are separated, that there's like a keep separate order amongst them. So I anticipate that they're not going to court the same day. And so what would have happened is Tenon would have been in court with his attorney, Al Chipperfield, longtime criminal defense attorney in Florida. And he would have been up there for a status conference. And then all of a sudden he starts saying things, and the judge has to cut him off. And I know we're going to get into what was said. But what I think would have happened is there were other criminal defense attorneys in the courtroom who were immediately texting the attorneys for Gardner, for Fernandez Saldana, and saying like, hey, you got it. Like something just went down. You need to get the transcript. You need to find out what's happened, because it did not come from the state of Florida, what had happened in the courtroom on that day.
Tim Jansen, you're in a North Florida courtroom most days, conducting business as the famed Tallahassee criminal defense attorney. Shannon just laid this out. It was basically kind of like a check-in moment with Judge London Kite, and then Henry Tenon goes off the rails. So we'll get to the details of what he said. But then you heard Shannon saying that, right away people are texting Shanna and Mario Fernandez Saldana's defense team. The state apparently did not notify them. Explain, I guess, in terms of lawyerly conduct, what the state should have done upon hearing this.
Well, the state has an obligation called Brady, okay? And this is their key witness. I'm sure they've given all his proffers or his testimony. Maybe they've even taken his depo. And it's a big case over there in Jacksonville. All the lawyers are watching it. And you might have a lawyer who's tangentially involved, maybe. And they hear the state's star witness changing his mind, trying to change his story. That would be the go-to impeachment. It'd be an inconsistent statement. That is discoverable immediately to the defense. There's a Brady case that it's a responsibility that not a lot of prosecutors take as serious as they should. They're trying to get educated on it. In fact, the Florida bar got to the point where they were saying anybody that does criminal prosecution or defense has to take a course in Brady, because it was being violated so many times. Either the prosecutor don't understand what Brady is. It can be favorable. It can be impeachment material. That has to be turned over to the defense. Now, I don't know how long has transpired since then, but clearly the government had a responsibility to notify the lawyers immediately so they could order a transcript, so they could notify their client, and then they could actually prepare to maybe even get a statement from Mr. Tenons and talk to their lawyers so they can say, hey, wait a minute, this might change the whole case. So it's a big deal. And that they said it on the record. Now there's a transcript, and he's going to be impeached. Now his credibility with the state has been severely tarnished, and they're going to have to work around it. They're going to have to work around him.
Yeah. I just want to make a very quick comment, but Julie Frew, we love you, and we had some personal things going on. I just saw something, and the COE is going to get to you, but we apologize for a slight delay there. It is intentional. So anyway, True Lifestyles. What is going on here? Joe Patuto, to you, with Henry's statements, why would he give up his plea deal? Could he be influenced by Shanna's parents? Now, we do know that Shanna's parents have gotten custody of Shanna and Jared's children, which is, probably to the dismay of the Bridigans, but that is the deal. And of course, the Bridigans will have visitation rights. These are the kids that were born from Shanna Gardner and Jared Bridegan, not obviously Jared Bridegan and Kirsten Bridegan's children. But Joe Patuto, I mean, it's perplexing. You've got an admitted trigger man who cuts a deal and is now basically saying he's got other thoughts that, and we don't know the specifics of it. Again, we're going to get to the to the transcript in a moment. But I mean, is this True Lifestyles is up in Jacksonville, by the way, Susan, and is a huge help to us behind the scenes. What do you think? I mean, do you think that maybe the parents did get to her? I mean, to him, to Henry. I'm sorry, get to him. Yes, I apologize.
I don't know. This doesn't happen every day of the week, so it is perplexing. I don't know. The defense has now, the judge just the other day granted a motion so that the defense can see his telephone calls from the jail. So there may be something on those that gives some idea. If he had, if he was allowed to have any visitors and had any visitors, that might give them some way of looking. I think everybody's frantically trying to investigate now. It was very curious. I read the transcript, and you're going to put it up. The judge just asked a question, and he tried to interrupt, and you don't know what he said. Actually, he said false. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to guess because usually with a guess you have some basis either in the information that's provided or in other like situations. And I don't know about the other two guests here, but I have neither in this case from which to make any kind of educated guess as to what was going on. I mean, you could say maybe he just feels bad and now he's telling the truth. Who knows?
Tim Jansen, it makes me wonder, 'cause I've asked you before about change of venue, and you tell me in your 36 or 38-year career, you've only seen it happen one time. Can you count the number of times on your hand that like a state's witness, an admitted accomplice to a crime who's cutting a deal, then says, hey, wait a minute, everything I told you is a lie?
I can't say it doesn't happen, and we might be a little bit too conspiratorial. Maybe he realizes at his age and what he looks like, he doesn't look well. He's looking at 15 to life. Maybe he realizes, hey, maybe I'll just take my deal. I don't want to be a snitch in prison, and I don't want to have everybody calling me a snitch. And maybe he has family on the outside. But to say someone may have paid him off, that's not as easy as you think. But he could be saying maybe he got pissed off at the agents or somebody, and they thought they were disrespecting him or his lawyer. Maybe he got in a fight with his lawyer, and he just wants to cause havoc. You never know.
So I want to just clarify one thing really quick. So he has pled guilty, but there's no deal. The way that the state of Florida works in the Fourth Circuit is they don't make a deal with you. You plea up to the judge and you get sentenced later. So he has pled to second-degree murder. Okay. And if he doesn't hold up his end of the bargain, he could go to prison for much longer than whatever the deal was going to be. And so that's one problem that.
But they already took the death off the table for him by that plea, right?
Yeah. Exactly. But they could put it back on the table, right? Like they unfiled their notice. They can always put it back on. And then also he's got he's got child abuse, accessory after the fact, and conspiracy that's still not guilty on the docket. So that's the other way they've got him, is they can get him concurrently on those, you know, they can do a lot. I have a different theory. You mentioned his age.
Yeah.
I think it's very possible he could be decompensating and he could be incompetent at this point. And then
that's interesting.
The record of the plea has the state agreeing with the defense that the judge should look at his age and a couple of other factors that would be mitigating for him. Judge doesn't have to do it, and judge doesn't have to follow it, but they at least made some motion towards moving it towards a recommendation, or at least an indication that they'd be looking at the lower end of the sentence. But you're right, at 62 or 63 at 15 years in prison. And, you know, that's not much of a deal.
Yeah, I didn't realize that about the deal. I mean, Tim, like in the case of Luis Rivera, that wasn't a deal. I always thought that was a deal.
That's different. That was a deal. What they did here, they just let him plead to a certain thing, left sentencing up to the judge. A lot of times they don't like to give a deal because it makes the witness not usable, because you're just lying to get this deal. And they'll say, well, you don't have a deal, do you? The judge is going to sentence you based on what the judge feels, right? So that's how they kind of insulate and bolster his credibility. Remember now, this was the actual killer in the case. You don't normally make the best deal with the person that pulls the trigger. You don't, unless you have to. Unless you feel that they really want to get her, or they don't have any other alternative to tie them together. So they put a lot of resources into using him as a witness, and they have to hold their nose putting him on the stand, right? Because he's the one that actually put the tire out there and shot and killed him with his little kid in the car. So the state is not coming in with clean hands.
So you've got a comment from True Lifestyles. I want to keep this one up, but she does agree with Shannon, saying Henry is older and going to die in jail. Good point, Shannon. He gains nothing by snitching. And then you've got a question, Shannon. Before I get to the question, let me just read this aloud for those who are listening to the audio side on everywhere podcasts are found. On February 7th, attorneys for Fernandez and Gardner worked to get Tenon's plea deals. So again, Shannon's saying technically it's not really a plea deal, thrown out. The co-defendants are seeking information about a court appearance last month. This is the one from January 13th, where Tenon is on record saying false testimony, that he gave false testimony, asking for a new attorney, while his attorney is standing right next to him, by the way. But Patty R. I know that's never happened to you, Tim, but
that's always a good day in court.
Yeah, that's always a great one. Patty R says, what is the procedure here with Henry Tenon? Do they check all his jailhouse communications? Well, that's what the defense is now asking for, Shannon. At least, you know, Mario and Shanna's defense wants to see the jailhouse calls and jailhouse records. But what is sort of the procedure here after an event like this?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's multiple things. There's so many moving parts, right? Like the Brady issues. What is the false statement that he says he gave? Like, that's, again, not clear. Why wasn't there a Nelson inquiry? You know, there's and a Nelson inquiry is when he says he wants a new lawyer, you actually have to ask him questions about that. The judge has to ask him questions about that, because that's his due process right. And there's a whole colloquy that you have to do, and that wasn't done. So it's like, well, why wasn't that done? And, you know, as far as like, so he's facing like a minimum of like 16 years to 25 years. So, you know, him not wanting to be a snitch, like that no longer makes sense, because he already pled guilty. Now he has to, his only way out of this is to say he didn't knowingly and voluntarily enter the plea. But then there's going to be a whole other transcript of him very much knowingly and voluntarily giving his plea and pleading up. And I'm sure that there was kind of like a wink and a nod from the prosecutors here. Like, we need you, like, help me help you. But it's not going to be what we call a blue form, which is a handwritten plea form that has like exactly what you're going to get. It's a contract basically, but there will be, some sort of settlement negotiations that happen, right? So the things that are happening behind the scenes right now are, they're going to do that investigation. There's actually a really big thing that's happening in the jails right now. We as attorneys are no longer allowed to give our clients any paper. You cannot bring paper into the jail. So everything that is brought into the jail by an attorney is photocopied by law enforcement, discarded, we don't know where it goes, and then handed to the client. So like everything that was brought into the jail, there's got to be a record. There's a rumor, like drugs are getting in the jail, that's why they're doing this, but there's a rumor that clergymen and mental health workers are bringing things into the jail. So that's something that I would want to know, especially if they think that maybe Shanna Gardner's family got to them. Like who from the Church of Latter-day Saints has come into this jail? I would want to know that.
That's interesting. I just want to make sure I understand that. So you can't come in there with a note for your client. You've got to, using an old word here, Xerox copy it and then hand the copy to them.
This happened about a year ago when they announced, maybe it might have been 2 years ago, but yeah. So in the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office you cannot bring anything to the jail. And if you want to bring a computer, you have to get like special approval. So when it comes to paperwork, including confidential discovery for our client to look at, you have the documentation and then everything is photocopied and then handed back to you. So they remove staples, they remove everything. And then the originals are discarded. Well, that's because an attorney was just arrested for bringing LSD into the jail or fentanyl into the jail. So it's still getting through. Like we know it's still getting through. And the question is like, well, who else can go to the jail, go behind the glass windows and go into the interview rooms where you actually have like physical contact with the inmates and you're able to hand them things? Clergy members and mental health workers and attorneys were the only ones who can come in and bring things in.
Wow, that's fascinating. Really fascinating. And if it's the clergy, shame on you. By the way, if you appreciate the content, please hit like, please subscribe. We've got a Patreon page. Tomorrow is the COE's birthday. Happy birthday in advance to the COE. So we're doing a show at a special time, which is 12 p.m. Eastern time, and we are looking at Bryan Kohberger. And wow, big news out of there with two mysterious blood DNA samples now being announced in open court that apparently in that case the state knew about very early on as well, causing reverberation. What's the word, Joe, that I just tried to say? Reverberations. There you go. Never say that word. And thank you, Tim Jansen. I asked the professor, but I appreciate your response, your quick response. But anyway, it's having a big ripple effect. We're going to discuss that tomorrow. Now, this is the guy that Tim just said was having a bad day in court. Either I have a little speck on my screen, or it looks like he used to wear an earring too that didn't heal well in that left lobe. But Chipperfield was totally caught off guard. It makes me think maybe Tenon is deteriorating due to age with his outburst. And then, by the way, I'm not going to say I'm young, but I'm definitely not old. But now people are like talking, I guess, because it's jail. But Tim, people are talking about people dropping dead and Joe in their 60s and early 70s, as though that's very old. That's not that old anymore. Because if it is, I'm very old, and I don't want to be that old.
62 and 15 is 77. So it's sort of on the higher end of the 70s, and it's jail time, right? And he's probably not healthy to begin with.
Yeah, that's
He
good.
doesn't
All
look
good,
healthy.
all
He doesn't
good
look
points.
healthy.
All good points.
Who's in this photo right here?
Is this? I thought this was Alan Chipperfield. Is this not? You know him.
No.
Well, it's not.
No, it's Al Chipperfield.
COE.
This is Al Chipperfield.
Oh, there you go.
That's
we had the wrong photo. There you go.
I
think that's a detective. Okay. But no, Al Chipperfield's like probably in his late 70s.
I was going to say, you said he's been around a long time. That guy didn't look like he was around a long time.
No,
and we're gonna get to Detective Johns, who that might be, I suppose.
Yeah, that might be Detective Johns.
Detective Johns. There you go. True Lifestyles here. Shannon, to you, would it be possible for Henry and Mario to speak in jail through people? I mean, what
No.
about that? I mean, Tim's saying no.
Through people, yes. Pass notes, yes, but not, they can't talk. There'll be separatees. There'll be separate units, separate pods.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that happens, right? And like the people who do defense work know, like, there's a lot of weird things that happen in jails. I wouldn't put past anyone to be able to do anything in a jail. Like, it's really crazy, the things that happen. But, how do we get here? Fernandez Saldana gave Tenon money, and not a lot of money, to murder a man in front of his child. So could the same be done to undo this? Like, the money talks, right? Like, Henry Tenon is very motivated by money. Maybe he's no longer trying to save himself. Maybe he's just trying to get a payday for somebody else on the outside. We don't know. What we do know is that this man was motivated by money. He can be motivated to flip for money. He probably knows he's going to die in prison, and the Gardner family has resources. So,
and by resources, like $100 million worth of resources. Chipperfield speculates that the co-defendants, Gardner and Fernandez, may have gotten a message to Mr. Tenon inside of jail via another inmate that may have influenced his testimony. Judge Kite shut down further speculation until formal court proceedings regarding the matter. I can't see it because of COE's comment, but close to takes place. COE, do you want to roll that sound, please?
Did you review those notes before you came to court?
Yes, and I have them with me.
Okay. What, to your recollection, do you recall, other than telling the state that it could not be resolved today and that you wanted to pass it, what did you say specifically as to any more detail, and what is your recollection or notes as to their response or any other commentary they may have made to you?
I suggested that we have a meeting and not bring him back into court, pass the case. I told the state that I thought I suspected that there may be an inmate in the jail who was influencing Mr. Tenon, and that it could have been that a co-defendant had gotten to him. That's my suggestion.
Do you have information that's true?
No.
Was that just speculation of you doing this kind of work for decades?
It was me trying to figure out why my client had surprised me in court.
Because you brought it up, do you have any information now that your client was influenced?
No.
So, Shannon, can you just explain what we just watched there?
That's Jesse Dreiser, who is the attorney for Fernandez Saldana. Great lawyer. And then Al Chipperfield was being questioned, which is like, Tim, this blows my mind, right? Like, that is the attorney for Henry Tenon, who has an attorney-client relationship, having to give sworn testimony about what is going on between him and his client.
It should never happen.
Yes, Shannon, as I recall in something I read, the transcript of what occurred when they left open courtroom, there are pieces of it missing, or it's garbled, or they can't understand it. And so what they did then was the defense was allowed to inquire of the defense lawyer about what was said in the hearing, since they don't have a transcript, or they don't have a complete transcript.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and I'm not saying that anyone in that clip did anything wrong. I'm just saying it's mind blowing to me that it's happening. And someone commented, "What a mess!" Like, what a mess! This is a mess. And the saddest part about this is, at the end of the day, 2 years ago, a man was brutally murdered in front of his child, and the case has been, at this point, pretty bungled. Like, it's bad, and to the point where they may not be able to prove this case, despite the fact that they have a lot of evidence about what has happened. These are constitutional rights violations, due process violations.
I mean, Shannon, let me jump in there. Who do you point the finger at? Do you point it at the state?
I mean, it's all on the state, right? Okay. It's the state's job to make sure that their witnesses are, protected in a way where they're not having contact. The state, by and through, all of the investigative agencies, the jail, the sheriff's office, like this is such a big case. And I mean, every case where somebody dies, right, should be handled the same way. But particularly in this case, when you know you have defendants who have who have resources, and we've all been around criminal behavior before, and like you were talking about the Adelson family, the playbook exists, right? Like this is not a surprise to anybody. So you need to do your best to make sure that your witness doesn't get tainted. And the fact that like a blind eye was turned and something was able to happen, if that's what happened, or he's not getting the healthcare he needs, not getting the mental health care he needs, like whatever the issue is, it is always to the state that everybody should be looking when things like this happen.
Yeah. Tim Jansen, you just heard Shannon say it is the state's fault, and they've had issues with discovery, and the list goes on. However, we saw something somewhat similar, on the flip side with the defense, mucking everything up in the in Don Adelson's trial. But what part of this rests? I mean, doesn't the Bucks? Forgive me, Judge London Kite, in advance, but what part of the buck stops with the judge here? Should she have been sorting some of this out way earlier on than where we're at now?
Well, judges always should have control of the case and know ahead of time the problems. The judge should have taken the defendant and the court reporter and the prosecution into chambers and do a Nelson inquiry, right? Could have done that under seal, try to get to the bottom of it. The prosecution should have immediately notified the defense lawyers for Shanna that what occurred. I don't know why they would have the co-defendant's lawyer cross-examining Tenon's lawyer about what was said in the court. You're putting that lawyer in a bad position because now he's given testimony against his client, which you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to harm your client. So I don't think any of that was handled properly. They could have done it in writing, or they could have filed motions and sealed camera, or the state could have even worked out a deal, worked out some kind of resolution and give it to the state, which doesn't sound like they did that. So it is problematic.
Tim, explain what a Nelson inquiry is. I hate when
Nelson is when your client says, I want a new lawyer. My lawyer is incompetent. We have conflict. I need a new lawyer. It happens most times with public defenders representing an individual. Some reason defendants don't think that a public defender is a lawyer. They say, I don't have a real lawyer. I got a public defender. That's not true. And they get frustrated because maybe they don't like the plea they're getting, or maybe they get a lawyer that's not going to, listen to their crazy stories. So they always complain, or they want the lawyer to do something the lawyer can't do, can't file frivolous motions. So they always want a new lawyer. It's kill the messenger. The guy bringing the message, kill the messenger. The court then has an obligation to have a hearing, to hear the complaints, have the lawyer respond, and see if there is a basis to have a new lawyer.
So again, people are listening. They listen to the podcast, don't watch it. So I'm going to read this. This is Professor Petuto. This is part of the back and forth between Henry Tenon and then Judge London Kite. Tenon says, Your Honor, may I say something? Again, this is like at a check-in with the judge, and the judge says, talk to Mr. Chipperfield first. That's the attorney. Tell him what you want to tell me, okay? And he just kind of keeps going. I just want to bring to your attention that my testimony, no. She tries to stop him. False testimony. Hold on, she says. So this is chaos here in the courtroom. Mr. Tenon, we need to talk about that, the lawyer says to his client, at which point he says, I need another attorney. Professor, if you're teaching this in law school, what is the lesson you want your students to learn after this exchange?
Don't do it this way. No, it's particularly in this colloquy when it's off now, but when the judge tells him, hold on, and he says at the end, I need another attorney, after she said, go talk to this lawyer. And he's saying, I've got something I want to unburden. That does not seem to me to be the appropriate response. Shannon said this case is a mess, and I agree. You recall this one started with the discovery issues with regard to the lawyers and the privileged information that ended up in the state's hands and the Taylor. And if you recall, the judge, the prosecution and the defense and the Tate lawyer could not get together about how to what order to handle it so expeditiously they could get the information with the privileged information expunged and do it in a timely manner. And at the end of that hearing, she still was unable to do it. Each side told her, we can't do it. And she said, go back and talk about it some more. So I think it's, I don't know her. She may be a wonderful judge, but it seems to me in this case, she needed to exercise more control quickly. And I agree completely with Tim and Shannon. When it's lawyer-client and that relationship, and you don't spring to attention and try to intervene immediately, it seems to me it's downhill from there.
Yeah. Thank you to Michael Ish here from pronouncing it correctly. A super sticker for the COE, I think. IGG STS giving us the intellectual conversation minus the host that we want in this case. Blackwood Door, Republic of Ireland, gifting 5 memberships, always very generous. So Shannon, back to you. I mean, the interesting part about this is that, basically the judge and the attorney jumped on this. And so he couldn't say that much, but apparently he couldn't really specify which parts of the testimony that he had previously given were actually untrue. So what happens to this? This is really bizarre. Also, I just want you to elaborate on why you think that the state now might not be able to make their case properly to a jury and has the potential to drop this, lose this case.
So one of the standard jury instructions in Florida is like sorry, I almost threw my computer off the ledge.
It's all good.
It's credibility of the witness. And, we instruct the jury that they have the right to weigh the credibility of the witness and determine their truthfulness. And what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, you're coming in here, this is your testimony today, but on another day you said your testimony is false. And on today you're going to say something different. So what's the truth, Mr. Tenon? What is the truth? You don't even know what the truth is. Because isn't it right that you did this on your own and they had nothing to do with this? No, that's all I'm saying. So, you can literally write the script of what his testimony is going to be and the way that the defense is going to argue that he is not believable. And the entire linchpin of this case are the payments that were made to him by Mario Fernandez, Saldana, and why those payments were made. And so Mr. Saldana says, well, that was for work, or that was for whatever it was for. And Mr. Tenon's going to say that it was to kill Jared Bridegan, which he did. And so that's the evidence they need. I mean, it could get so bad that I think there could be some witnesses that are struck, some evidence that's excluded. I mean, this is really not good. And it is kind of like a case study, right? Because there's so many big issues, but I think there could be sanctions coming down the pipeline at some point.
That's interesting. Ned Smith saying about Shanna that she's mean and guilty. There you go. She could be a potential juror, although Ned is a former court reporter. Tim Jansen, defendant's motion to adopt co-defendant's pleading titled motion requesting. Why can't lawyers just speak in English? Why do they have to speak?
I speak in English. You just heard Shannon speaking English. Tim speaks in English. You're talking about lawyers who, I don't know, they think using legalese makes it better, and it doesn't. I agree with you. Absolutely.
Yeah. By the way, Tim Jansen, this guy's got the greatest job. Jose Baez making big bank, and apparently he's never in court. But you see here, and again, I'm going to read. Comes now the defendant, Shanna Gardner, by and through her undersigned. I'm going to write emails like this from now on, by the way. Undersigned counsel adopts co-defendant Mario Fernandez Saldana's pleading titled blah, 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 which requests for the state of Florida certain materials connected to Henry Tenon's admission made in open court. So, and the false testimony. So What is the defense? What would you do in this case? We heard Shannon, and and it came up earlier that they're going to ask for his jailhouse calls. But is there anything else? Would you put out, like, would you cast a wide net? And how wide a net can you cast, and what does that include?
Baez wants to throw up anything he can throw up, right? And now the state has given him an opening with their most crucial witness, who probably could have been credible, even though he got a deal. It's clear that he committed the murder. And we don't know what he's going to say was a lie. It may be meaningless. It may be very important. But this is a death penalty case. So you got to think, every time the state messes up and that prosecution case, the foundation has leaks, you're not going to get a death penalty. You're not going to get a death penalty because there are going to be jurors on there going to say, well, I don't know. I don't know. And if they don't get the death penalty, it's kind of a win, right? And if one doesn't get convicted, that's a big win. But now do they have to go and give the ex-husband a deal because they can't use Tenon? When they were playing hardball, when they had Tenon, now do they soften up and maybe give him a deal to go against Shannon?
Prisoner dilemma.
Right.
I don't think either one of them's going to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is interesting. A couple of like legal questions here about this trial. So Shannon, to you from Janet, has the defense, do we know, already deposed Henry Tenon? And if so, can they do it again, despite of what just happened?
Yeah, so I haven't looked at the docket recently. I assume that there has been a deposition, and we would know that because in the public record, it's going to say notice of taking deposition. Just a quick note on Jose Baez's motion. He adopted Jesse Dreiser's motion. So that's the motion that has the meat, right? They're just literally, I can't even imagine what the Fernandez family or the Gardner family paid this man, but you're right. Like the attorney, Jesse Dreiser's firm is the one that's basically doing all the work, doing all the spearheading. And then Shanna Gardner is getting the benefit of adopting.
An even better job. So he's like cutting and pasting and getting paid the most.
Literally.
That's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
So, as far as like whether or not he's going to be deposed again, absolutely. Like there's a basis. Discovery depositions have very wide latitude, and there's absolutely a reason for him to be deposed again. But, I do want to just circle back on the issue of like, okay, well, what's really happening here? They're going to do all this discovery. They're going to try to figure out who has had contact with him, what's going on in the jail, to the extent that they can. They might not really get anything out of that. But what if he's losing it? Like, what if he's devolving, and what if he's incompetent? So like, that's the part that for me, I think would be the saddest outcome, if he is incompetent to proceed and he can't testify because he's incompetent, and then they really can't do anything. I mean, it might not be nefarious. It might just be he's older.
Yeah, I mean, these are all good points, and could see the case, like you said, just fall apart. Tim, why don't you take this one? Can Jose Baez, your nemesis, use Henry Tenon's recanting of his testimony to now try to dismiss the case? Is he going to just say that this is such a mess, so far gone? This is who the state was depending on. And look, you can't trust a word he's saying. He's even switching his word in court. You need to dismiss this case. And suddenly Shanna and Mario Fernandez Saldana walk out of jail. Is that possible? Is that what he's going to do?
Well, they could file a motion in limine that he can't be a witness, and ask the court to inquire whether he meets the standards to be a witness. The standard to be a witness is much less than be a standard to be a defendant. Competency is not the highest standard, right? In federal court, they find everybody competent. If they don't, they'll send you to Butner, North Carolina, and you're going to be competent in 2 weeks. So yeah, Jose is he's salivating at this. He's probably getting more money because of this, telling the family, I need to do more stuff, more work. And yeah, it's an opening. And as a defense lawyer, all you want is an opening. But once you have an opening, once you're in the tent, now the state has a problem. My question is, are these the best prosecutors in that office that have handled these high profile murder cases in the past, Shannon?
No comment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, actually, let me look and see who's on this case. I know one person that's on the case, and Well, here's the other thing.
We don't want Shannon getting in trouble
We don't
because
want
she
you to-
work there.
No
But
comment on the judge. No
Yeah.
comment on
yeah,
I mean-
while Shannon's looking at this real quick, I mean, this is obviously the motion, as it says up top, to compel. This is about the jailhouse calls. Joe Patuto, they say that every jailhouse call that needs to be listened to is listened to, but specifically here, if you were, playing defense team, or I guess in this day it would be the defense team, what sorts of things are you? First of all, it's a painstaking process, but what would you be looking for, Joe?
On the defense team for not Tenon, but the other two.
Yes.
The other two defendants. Yeah. I would be looking at anything that indicates, among other things, anything that indicates that that Tenon is of right mind. Two, did he say anything on those calls to indicate that what he said in order to get the plea, or when he pled, was not true? I would be looking at, let me see what else I would do on those calls, because some of what's going to be on the calls might help the prosecution. If they could get someone from the other side suggesting to him that they'd pay him, which I can't imagine would happen. But you're going to be looking for anything that suggests that his recanting is accurate and the original statement is the one that wasn't true. And the original discovery motion that they asked for everything, including the kitchen sink. They wanted documents. They wanted records of who saw him in the jail. They wanted records of practically, when he got up in the morning, when he went to sleep at night, everything that went on. It's a very comprehensive list, and they're looking for anything that would bolster the idea that he's telling the truth now when he says he said something that wasn't true before.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things they can do, just so you know. So it's always being recorded. And then what they'll do, the state will request the calls, and they'll send, they can request the call. So the evidence is going to be there. But sometimes inmates will use other people's PIN numbers. So one thing I bet they're going to do is they're going to look at every phone number that is called Saldana and Gardner. And then they're going to see all of the calls that were made to those numbers. So it's all computerized now. So it's actually pretty easy to get the data, but they'll just do data dumps, and they'll pull not only his PIN, but they'll pull phone numbers that are known to the defendants to try to figure out what's going on. But what's weird about this is we're here speculating maybe the other defendants, Jesse Dreiser's client, did something to tamper with the witness. And it's Jesse Dreiser who's going really hard on trying to get to the truth. So that's curious to me, because if he thinks his client did something, which he should know because of privilege, why would he set his client up for a tampering charge? This just dawned on me. So maybe
clients do lie to lawyers, don't they? Even their own lawyers?
For sure. But that train is rolling. And, if he's really amped up and really leading the charge, maybe I would have said to my client, sir, I need you to tell me right now you had nothing to do with this. Tell me right now, because I can't defend a lie. If you had something to do with this, we'll deal with it. But if you didn't have anything to do with this, I'm going to get to the bottom of this, and I'm going to find out what happened. So now I'm realizing it doesn't behoove these defendants, if they tampered with Mr. Tenon, to have their attorneys go down this path. So that now is making me think maybe it wasn't the defendants.
Yeah, maybe we're right back to I don't know.
Well,
I mean, does that include Gardner's parents?
Sorry.
Does that, what you just said, does that include Shanna's parents?
Well, remember, it's Saldana that is talking to Jesse Dreiser. That is the two of them are talking. Maybe they're talking to Baez and Gardner. Maybe, I don't know. But, Dreiser's duty is to Saldana and only Saldana. So if he's saying I had nothing to do with this, and maybe he can be the one that does walk free if Shanna Gardner and her parents are tampering with the witness, but he might be wanting to isolate himself. So again, it's funny that we've got Baez just adopting the motions. What if they walk themselves into a tampering charge? I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, you see, Katie Esquire, obviously an attorney, unless her last name is Esquire. Well, if the defense, Tim Jansen, wants to use the calls, please explain this, Tim. It would be self-serving hearsay as opposed to an admission, which is specifically accepted in the rules of evidence in Florida. I mean, I'm not fully understanding this because I would think if it's a jailhouse call and it's in his words, how's that hearsay, Tim? Can you explain that?
Well, just like a defendant gets arrested, they make self-serving hearsay statements. They're not going to be admissible, and usually the state is not going to use them if they're favorable. They only introduce them if they're actually admissions. Now, could they be used to impeach the testimony if the state puts him on the stand, if he's saying something else to someone else? Possibly it could be admissible for that purpose.
True Lifestyles, again, from the Jacksonville area. She's been following this very closely. There are a few more key witnesses. Kim Jensen, who's one of the textees on a group text. John Biggerstaff. They're giving their testimony to save their you-know-what. They're behind. Biggerstaff knows what happened, which kind of leads me into what we see on the screen here. Notice of taking a deposition. March 26, 2025, the defense is going to take the depositions of the person named here, Detective Christopher Johns, Jacksonville Police Department. Chris Johns is the lead investigator in the case, and he became kind of a focal point, Shannon, because of allegations of providing misleading testimony, withholding critical evidence. He kind of brought up the whole text exchange with these people who are friends of Shanna Gardner's, later testifying that there were actually jokes. And originally, I think Detective John said it was kind of code words. So what's happening with this aspect of the trial? And at this deposition, what's I mean, they're obviously going to grill this guy to no end, but what will be kind of the final, like what is the end game for them in this deposition for the defense?
So, if you don't have the facts, you argue the law, and if you don't have the law, you pound the table. But there's a lot of ways that this case can be defended. Number one, police misconduct, right? Number two, prosecutorial misconduct. Number three, the key witness is a liar. So all of those things are equally strong arguments, and they're having to approach this from at least three different fronts, or four, their clients are not guilty. I mean, I don't know. That's really the attack here. But certainly, like, what is going to happen in that deposition is going through every conversation, everything that might have happened, everything they didn't do, everything they failed to do, everyone they overlooked, and just getting the most information so that they can really give their clients their due process and give them the best defense.
So the next hearing with Henry Tenon, at least as of now, was April 14th, a couple months away. So let's make sure we add that to the STS calendar there. And I don't mean the calendar with Tim Jansen as Mr. December. I mean the STS calendar where we keep track of our dates. And whatever happened to the STS calendar, we got to get that back in play. So something else that's of note is this woman, Shanna Gardner, the focal point, and she's staying busy behind bars, as you see here. Apparently, she's got a love interest. In a letter to her sister, Shanna writes, "I see so much good in him." So this is a woman, I think, who identifies as a male behind bars. "I see so much good in him. He's a damaged soul. You know me and my broken things. I could be very good for him, but it's like a Mario situation. He would have to be willing to work hard to heal himself, not want me to fix him." Joe Patuto, you're the de facto psychologist here. You had to deal with law students your whole career. What is going on here? Again, she's apparently having a relationship with a woman / now man in this jail. That you see, the Citizen is the publication. What's happening here? It's interesting that she kind of invokes Mario Fernandez Saldana's whole thing, which a lot of people believe she manipulated him. Is this woman, just as my mother would say, a master manipulator?
Yes.
There you go.
I think she's also controlling. I think I read something where she was considered the black sheep in the family, and it looks as though on several occasions what she's doing is to stick it to the rest of the family. They didn't approve of Mario, and he certainly didn't look like he fit within the picture of who someone with her background in education and finances would be dating. She seems to be somebody who wants to be in control of the relationship, in control of everything that's going on. And I think that's what's coming out here. And I don't know if you're going to go there, Joel, but she's had a number of violent infractions in jail that would feed into the same thing.
Yeah. Tim Jansen, if your client, high profile female client, is now dating a woman who identifies as a male, and is now writing notes that become public, what are you telling your client? The trial date is October 2025, but what are you telling your client at this point, Tim Jansen?
Well, any good lawyer who's got a client with current charges tells them no social media. Stop immediately. You're not on any social media at all. You're not even looking at social media, less posting or giving interviews. It's just bad. It's just lack of control by her lawyer, lack of caring by her. This case is not all bad, okay? If Henry Tenon is damaged up because of this, Henry Tenon had no motive to kill this man.
Right.
For all intents and purposes, he didn't take his watch. He didn't take his wallet. He was sent there to do this for a reason. Someone had to know he was traveling on that road. So the state can build up the credibility, even if he is damaged a little bit. The jury's going to know who had the motive. And then you see the payments, and you see the relationship to the ex-wife. They're going to be able to follow that pretty easily. Now, can Baez make some hay? Yeah. But is it going to be enough to get 12 jurors to walk these people? No, that's not going to happen.
Tim, do you agree with Shannon that this case could potentially be in jeopardy because of multiple screw ups, and then you got Tenon recanting now? Or is it, I mean, to me, it seems, barring what I just mentioned, like a fairly open and shut case, but there's been so many problems. So bottom line, do you think it's in jeopardy right now?
I don't think it's in jeopardy unless there's some proof that it was done purposeful, some constitutional violation, and the judge determines that she's going to keep certain evidence out that can be damaging to the state for prosecutorial misconduct. I'm not so sure I don't know, Tenon's going to be that great a witness anyway. He's going to be less credible now. But, remember, jury instruction is going to tell you, as Shannon says, credibility, you can determine you believe part, all, or nothing of what they say. And you are the trier of fact. You decide what credibility to give. And then when he makes his statement about I lied, I didn't want to do this, you didn't know the victim. Well, he had no reason to go out there and shoot this victim. And he's living with or renting and getting checks from the wife of the decedent's ex-wife. Come on. Common sense. I mean, it doesn't take long to follow that trail.
Yeah.
And jurors are smart. Jurors know a man like this is not killed just by accident. No one took his watch or his wallet.
Right.
They knew it was a setup. It was clearly a setup.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how a juror could think anything else unless, maybe Jose Baez has something up his sleeve for the $1 trillion he's getting paid. But Joe was just saying there have been, disciplinary violations from Shanna Gardner, and they go all the way back to April of 2024. Some of them just came out. Upon completing a shakedown of inmate Gardner's cell, a cup of cheeked medication was found, which was determined to be medication taken by inmate Gardner. Extra mattress and a fishing line was also found under inmate Gardner's bunk. Then on June 13th, 2024, a discipline report states a violation of possession of any other contraband and introduction of any contraband. Though no plea, finding, or narrative is provided with this report. And then you look here, possession of a tattooing instrument. That's interesting. Attempt to manipulate staff, disorderly conduct, disobeying verbal or written order, theft of property exceeding $50, lying to staff members or others in an official capacity, or falsifying records, Shannon, can you comment on this? Because then we also get additional disciplinary reports from just this year, January 5th of 2025, saying that they discovered an armband belonging to an inmate lying on her assigned bunk. What does that even mean? What's an armband in prison? Who cares?
So, I mean, in jail, there's lots of rules. They're very arbitrary, and if you violate the rules, the corrections officers will write you up. So as far as like the armband goes, that could be, I don't know what that is. Because they don't wear like I don't
That could be their name tag.
maybe
what I
they're
thought it
yeah like
was.
they wear like the hospital bracelets. That's
Right.
what they like. I would call that a wristband, but I think of an armband as being like up here. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of rules, and we kind of talked about the fact that she does not care. She doesn't care what the rules are. She's doing whatever she wants, and that's a very insane behavior when you are incarcerated, when you are locked in a cage facing, a death penalty, to just be so flippant that she would violate not just a few things, but multiple: disorderly conduct, disobeying verbal orders. I mean, she's clearly not well liked amongst the COs. And so they're not going to do her any favors. They're not going to protect her. And when she goes to prison, if she goes to prison, I guess really when, she's going to have a very rude awakening.
I don't wish that on anyone. I guess unless you kill somebody, then you belong there. Joe, are you ever surprised by the short-sightedness of criminals and the hubris? Good question. And again, look, you're looking at this. She has a tattooing industry. I mean, this woman comes from extreme wealth, extreme privilege. I mean, we're talking like $100 million worth of generational money from her parents. And we're seeing this with the Alexander brothers, accused of R-ing over 60 women now. But Joe, are you surprised by this? Was the bottom line question.
Yeah, let me say two things about this. There was also information. She did a mission when she was still a member of the LDS Church. And they, at the end of the mission, they have other students who were on the mission talk about, give assessments of people. And her assessment was manipulative, lying all the time, needed to be in control, and on and on and on. And I think this is indicative of the same thing. The theft of property is really amazing, because I think that's of another inmate, and I can't imagine anything more dangerous to do than to steal property of somebody else in a jail. But as to the general,
$50 worth, that's I can't imagine what that was.
Yeah, I don't know what it was either. But
Shannon, what's the repercussion for stealing from somebody in jail? I imagine it is getting your ass kicked.
I mean, that's the street justice. But no, I mean, you get put in confinement, you lose privileges, what can they take away from someone in jail? It's like basically their humanity. So, you get put into solitary. You can't use the phones. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that they punish people. And I just don't know why she would poke the bear like that.
Yeah.
I
By the way,
to the question that was up there for me, Joel, excuse me, and that is, am I surprised? Initially, yes, but I do think this is a signature characteristic of a certain type of offender. That it's not for them. It's not for the rest of us who would say, I wouldn't do this. I mean, you look at this and you would say, I'm going to be going to trial for murder. Would I want all this, showing? Would I want to be doing all this before? I would want to be a model prisoner, but they're not wired the same way. They're just not wired the same way.
That's a law professor saying that, not a criminal, which is what she is purported to be. Are we aware of any mental diagnosis for Shanna? I don't know of any. Shannon, do you?
I don't think she's mentally ill, but I think that based on her behavior, there could be something else. If you pick up what I'm putting down here, like I don't want to. The short answer is no, but there are a lot of behaviors that are being exhibited that I think there's probably a name for, but we are not privy to that information.
KCL letting us, she always does. She always fills in the gaps. Gardner stole canteen from another inmate. How does one steal canteen, Shannon?
They have like boxes, like they have little cubbies that they're allowed to store things. So, you get commissary, you have the ability to purchase more than the basics. And there's a lot of different ways that you can get it. Mostly, I assume her parents are funding her commissary, and so she would have had to go into the box of someone else's commissary and take it out and basically raid their stash. And for someone like her, $50 of commissary is easy to get. For someone, the average Duval County inmate, they don't have the resources to have $50 worth of like snacks and chips and hygiene products. Like, you have to buy some hygiene products in the jail.
Do you think the other, by the way, Phantom 6000, friend of mine, friend of the show, all around great guy, and an attorney in the LA area, ASAP Rocky, not guilty. The verdict just came in. I got to be honest, I haven't followed that. If I'm not discussing it, I'm usually not following it because I don't have time, but there you go. Joe Patuto, I would ask Carm, but tonight is movie night in her building, and she's unavailable. Otherwise, I would have asked her. By the way, I was at Carm's building over the weekend, and she's neighbors with Ohad Fisherman, who's one of those indicted in the Alexander brothers case, and apparently he was holding court with a bunch of old Jewish women at the building, explaining to them why he was innocent of these charges. I would have paid to see that. That's what goes on in Carm's building. You got guys who are with ankle monitors explaining to the women who are above the age of 85 why he is not guilty. I would have actually paid a lot of money to see that. Jimmy McNutty chiming in here. ASAP wasn't ASAP in my agenda. There you go. Jimmy McNutty, the trial watcher for the last 1,000 years. Finally, let's just, this is a little bit older news, but the Tim Jansen, there are financial transactions between the defendants, payments to Tenon from Mario Fernandez Saldana totaling $10,000. They were issued from First Choice Home Rentals, LLC. Again, they show payments, and I had sort of a breakdown of some of the things that they were paying for. I can't seem to find those specifics right now. But when a jury hears that the estranged husband, who was at the time with Shanna Gardner, is making these weird payments to a guy who had nothing to do with this case, really, isn't that a guilty verdict right there?
Well, it certainly is the link. It ties the link. Tenon probably didn't do anything to deserve $10,000 except murder somebody and keep them from having to be at the scene. They gave another patsy, right? Luis Rivera. They thought they could hire this poor guy and he would take the blame, or no one would believe him, and they trusted that he was going to commit this crime and not get caught, so it wouldn't get linked back to him. And they're giving checks. I mean, how dumb are these people? You don't give the murderer a check. You don't give your hitman a check. Just crazy.
Yeah, we saw Donna Adelson signing those checks in a case similar. So just a final question for Shannon, and then we'll get some final thoughts here. Death penalty considerations. I took a note here. What factors do prosecutors evaluate when deciding to seek the death penalty? This is a death penalty eligible case. It appears as of right now, the state is going to pursue it when it comes to Shanna and Mario Fernandez Saldana, TBD with Henry Tenon, I guess, depending on what's going on. And you see here, February 16th marked 3 years, and you see Kirsten and him, and it looked like a real happy, beautiful couple together. Obviously, his life cut short for literally just hard. It's just horrific to think about. But what about these death penalty considerations, Shannon, to you?
Yeah, so I mean, there's criteria in Florida that they have to prove in order to prove the death penalty, and I'm sure those are big factors. But obviously, in this case, this is a tool that is being used to encourage a plea. And what's interesting to me is that the defense does not seem to be swayed necessarily. All of these things that are happening, all of these factors give advantage to the defense, and they could certainly go and say, take the death penalty off the table. We'll do a plea. I don't think that there's any negotiations happening right now, despite maybe some ability to do so.
And do you see these cases being severed, or are they going to be tried together?
They're definitely going to be tried together. We have so many cases in Duval County right now. For judicial economy, they will have to be tried together.
I'm not sure what this means, but I'll take it. Really happy, Joel, not real happy. I'm not sure what that means, but it sounds about right. Another amazing panel. Again, this is set to go, as you just heard, in tandem. They will be tried, not severed. And it's going to happen right now, if it's not continued, in October. A lot of big trials coming up this year. And after seeing what happened, I peripherally checked out what was going on with Karen Reed today. It made me want to stay away from it even more. I'm going to find another trial, and anyone who doesn't want to deal with Reed can come watch our coverage of whatever we decide to do. I just cannot handle the incestuous, weird nature of that trial, where everybody is just mired in everybody else's business. I'm over.
When's that trial, Joe? Is it in July?
April, I believe.
Oh,
April.
okay.
And Tim's so good with that, but I just can't deal with it. Go ahead,
I'm
Shannon.
following it I'm obsessed with that case. It's so fascinating. I was in Massachusetts when they read the verdict, or lack thereof.
Yeah. And I'm going to pay zero attention to it this time around, because I don't work for anybody anymore, and I don't want to deal with it anymore. It's most toxic environment. It's kind of fun. And the only way I would ever cover it, if I'm like a wrestler and I go full heel, I pick one side and that's it. And everyone can go screw themselves on the other side. Now that might be fun as a social experiment. So we'll see. But anyway, did I just say that out loud? Yes. So we wait. This is from Kirsten Bridegan and Justice for Jared. So we wait. We wait for justice as it takes time to come. And while we wait, we continue to fight and pray that people will speak the truth, that the judge and jury will be able to discern truth from lies and have the courage to act accordingly, that the prosecutors, witnesses, and evidence will all be protected from harm. We pray hard for so many things. This just gave me the chills, but we shouldn't have to. You should be here, meaning Jared, of course. All of our kids should be growing up together, building memories, not traumas. This shouldn't be our reality. I pray that this next year without you brings justice and healing. We'll continue to honor you by smiling, laughing, and moving forward as best we can. We will always remember the amazing, thoughtful, funny, strong, and adventurous husband, dad, uncle, brother. I miss you. I love you. And I will always fight for justice for Jared. Right. This is what it's all about. Not all the other craziness that we were just discussing. And you got to feel for this family. Joe Patudo is professor emerita at the University of Nebraska School of Law, friend of ours, friend of the shows, friend of anyone who meets her. And of course, she is from the greatest state, New Jersey. Your final thoughts? I mean, that statement is beautifully written. Reminds you of something the COE would write, but beautifully written for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. But it's absolutely eloquent, and it reminds us that for every one of the Shannas or the Adelsons, there are many, many, many more people who are like Kirsten. This case underscores again for me how incredibly important it is that police, prosecutors, law enforcement generally do it right when they're putting a case together. Don't cut corners. Be thorough. Be ethical about it. Because when they do it that way, then it's still a trauma. It's still hard for the family. But you have a fair amount of confidence that you're going to get the right result. These cases, and I think I agree with Tim that I think there's enough here, but they still cause so much more trauma for the family because they have to go through looking at all this and worrying about, what's going to happen and whether this will go forward. It's going to make, I don't want to say a circus of the trial, but it's going to make the trial much more of a running down rabbit holes rather than focusing on what really the issues are in the case. So I guess that's where I would end, to really honor the people in law enforcement who do it right, because they make everything after that so much more, I won't say easy, but so much more available to get to the just result.
Yeah, and law enforcement typically does a very good job. But here it sounds like this Detective Johns is a problem for the state. But Tim Jansen is the famed Tallahassee criminal defense attorney. First letter is R, but he's OUR as well. Tim, your final thoughts here. There was a question that someone had put up about the custody dispute. We saw that, of course, and are seeing it in the Adelson / Markell. It should be the other way around, Dan Markell / Adelson case. But what part of the custody dispute will the jurors know about? Because now Shanna Gardner's parents have custody, which, if you are a juror that doesn't know the case, you might think, oh, these are wonderful parents, wonderful family, wanting to care for the kids, not knowing the other side of the story. So I guess what will they find out about the custody arrangement? Your final thoughts, Tim Jansen.
Well, they shouldn't know anything about it. It's not relevant. There should be a motion in limine for it. I had a case like this where the mother of the child killed the husband. I was representing the half sister, and the mother, who was charged with murder, wanted to give the child to her parents. And in Florida, the mother of the child, even if she's in prison, has a say-so. We had to go to a full hearing, and we kept the parents. We had to prove the grandparents were not worthy of it. All good cases, big cases, can go on the rails, go off the rails. Look at what happened to O.J. Simpson. You had some police misconduct, turned that thing into a circus. Karen Reed, that thing turned into a circus, and I think the judge played a part in that also. And the last thing I want to say to Ileana, happy birthday. My daughter's birthday is tomorrow also. My oldest daughter.
What a good date.
It is February 19th. So it's been a pleasure.
Happy birthday to your oldest daughter, Tim Jansen.
Janie,
yeah.
She's a lawyer in
Janie
Atlanta.
And Annie. Tim, send her my love from the COE. Shannon Schott, she is a Jacksonville woman through and through, raised there, went to school there, and went to Stetson University College of Law. A question here, and then your final thoughts, Shannon. Is Shanna Gardner's defense going to put all the responsibility on Saldana? This is from Bill Davis. If so, and they're tried together, will that create hostility? Very interesting, between the defense camps. That's definitely one strategy. Do you expect to see that?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that could happen. At this point, they're very much piggybacking off of each other's work. And it looks like they're very much working together right now.
And your final thoughts here, Shannon. How does this play out in the coming months? Do you think this actually begins in October, or will it be continued because of all these issues?
At this point, there's really no issues as far as the facts of what happened, what didn't happen. These are more due process issues. I don't see a reason why they couldn't get this done in time for October. This case will be given precedent over the other cases. It will be given priority. And, it's going to be a lot of work to get this case tried. And I think they need to do as much as they can to try to get it to trial in October.
This is a great panel, as always. By the way, I'm glad IGG brought this up. Carrie Rawson's having a really difficult time. She's a friend. I have not been able to reach her. She's having health issues. For those who do not know, she is the daughter of the BTK serial killer. Not her choice, obviously, but very difficult existence as a result of all of that trauma. And now she's having a really tough time. She's was or is still in the hospital, and like many people in this country, is financially in a tough situation and faces homelessness, from what I understand. So there is a GoFundMe. Hopefully the COE can put the link into this show summary. We had it up the other day, and we will try to get the word out there, and I will continue to reach out. So There you go. Julia here. Ileana is such a beautiful name for a gorgeous lady. Happy birthday is a very pretty name. It's funny because we don't really call her that. Either does her family. Her family calls her Illy, but they all say Ely, and I call her Bugs or the COE. So there you go. Julie Frew also letting us know that Carrie Rawson is a friend of hers. Julie, if you speak to her, please tell her that we are asking about her and also how we can help her beyond the GoFundMe. So again, tomorrow, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, do that today, not tomorrow, but tomorrow we're doing Brian Koberger, accused of the quadruple murder in Moscow, Idaho. 2 foreign blood DNA samples have now been brought into discovery, into question, and we're going to discuss the repercussions and ramifications and reverberations of all of that tomorrow. Love you, America. Love you, Jacksonville. Love you, Tallahassee. Love you, Jersey, my home state there. And, of course, justice for Jared B. See you tomorrow, everybody.